The cardboard roof sagged under the weight of another restless sky. Rain whispered through the cracked ceiling of the alley awning, soaking the edges of a threadbare blanket curled around a man's shivering body. He looked like a forgotten shadow, bundled in layers of second-hand sweaters, one of them missing a sleeve. His gray-streaked beard clung damp to his chin, his breath puffing like ghost smoke in the October chill. Around him the city moved like it always did. Fast, loud, unaware. Neon signs flickered onto wet concrete. A half-crushed soda can rolled past his hand, tapping once against a crate before settling. He didn't move. A soggy paperback rested near his chest, pages warped and swollen, its cover barely legible. Somewhere safe with somebody good. The irony was cruel and not lost on him. Across from him, rain danced off an overflowing trash bin. A soaked paper cup floated briefly on a puddle before sinking. The man's fingers curled tighter around the blanket. He wasn't asleep, not fully, just quiet, conserving energy the way people who live outside do. The kind of stillness that isn't rest, just pause. A distant clap of thunder rolled across the skyline. The man blinked once, eyes pale and glassy. He stared up at the holes in the sheltering tarp above, where rain slipped through like tiny daggers. One landed right between his eyebrows. He didn't flinch. Then, footsteps, slow, careful, not hurried like the others. They stopped at the mouth of the alley, leather soles polished, too clean for this part of town. The man didn't lift his head, but his grip on the blanket loosened slightly. Just enough. Another thunderclap. Louder. And then a voice, unfamiliar, soft, curious. "Are you cold?" By morning the sky had settled into a soft gray drizzle. The man stood beneath the awning of a closed bakery, steam rising from the sewer grates around him. A hand-me-down beanie hugged his head. His shoes were mismatched, one sneaker, one cracked leather boot. He stepped forward, hands slightly out, voice low but clear. "Spare any change? Just a coffee would mean the world." A businessman brushed past without eye contact, umbrella tilted to shield himself more from the man than the rain. Another passerby, a woman with headphones, eyes on her phone, veered around him like he was part of the sidewalk. "Please, I don't need much," he said again, softer this time. "Just enough for warmth." A teenager threw a smirk over his shoulder, then mimed a violin under his chin. Laughter echoed between glass storefronts. The man lowered his hands and backed toward the wall. His voice, so willing only minutes ago, sank into silence. He turned to leave. The wet pavement shimmered like broken glass. "Excuse me?" He paused. A woman in her late 40s approached. Drenched curls stuck to her cheeks and her coat was too thin for the weather. She didn't look wealthy, but she looked present. She didn't offer coins. "Just a plastic grocery bag. For you," she said. "It's not much, but my daughter insisted." He took it slowly, eyes meeting hers for a flicker of a second. Inside the bag, a granola bar, a pair of wool socks, and a folded drawing in crayon, a bright yellow sun with two stick figures beneath it. One held an umbrella. "She said you looked like someone who'd remember how to smile." The man stared at the drawing. A lump formed in his throat. Off to the side he heard a cough, dry, deep, familiar, echoing beneath a nearby street lamp. He sat beneath the street lamp, rain dripping rhythmically onto the pavement beside him. The cough echoed again, harsh, distant, but his mind was already slipping backward, pulled into an old melody that lived behind his ribs. He unfolded the child's drawing again. The stick figures smiled under the yellow sun, umbrella tilted between them. A laugh, small, girlish, flickered through his memory like light through cracked glass. "Higher, Daddy! Spin me higher!" The memory bloomed, a living room flooded with sunlight. A little girl in a polka-dot dress, spinning with an umbrella in her tiny hands, pretending the carpet was a stage. The man, younger, clean-shaven, shirt sleeves rolled, clapped along, grinning. "You'll make the rain jealous, sweetheart." "Rain can't dance like me," she giggled, spinning again until she collapsed into his arms. He caught her, both laughing. Her hair smelled faintly of apples. The sound of their laughter echoed against the piano in the corner, its lid open, sheet music scattered like petals. She climbed onto the stool, small fingers pressing unsteady notes. He knelt beside her. "Every song," he whispered, guiding her hands, "should start with something honest." He tapped her chest lightly. "Here. That's where the music lives." Then the light changed. The living room dimmed, sunlight fading to gray. The piano stood silent. The laughter, gone. He blinked, back in the present, rain pattering against the child's drawing. His hands trembled. He could still smell apples. Or maybe just the rain. The cough returned. Closer this time. A woman's silhouette hunched under the same street lamp, arms wrapped tight, shivering. He stood slowly, pocketing the drawing, something inside him, some remnant of the father he once was, refused to stay still. He took a cautious step forward. Rain came harder now. Thick, heavy drops that blurred the streetlights into golden ghosts. The man stood beneath the awning, his blanket rolled under one arm, the other holding a torn, crooked umbrella he'd rescued from a trash bin weeks ago. Its handle was cracked, and one side sagged lower than the other. But it worked. Mostly. The woman under the street lamp coughed again. Her jacket was soaked through. Her hair clung to her face. She pressed a hand to her chest, breath shallow. He hesitated. His umbrella wasn't much, but it was all he had between him and pneumonia. He stepped out anyway. "Ma'am?" His voice cracked from disuse. "You need this more than I do." She blinked through the rain. "No, please. Keep it. You'll get sick." He smiled faintly. "Already am." The umbrella opened with a metallic click. He held it over her head, the broken rib wobbling as it caught the downpour. The two of them stood awkwardly close, a homeless man and a stranger, sharing the small trembling circle of dry air. She studied him for a moment. Her eyes softened. "You shouldn't be out here," she murmured. "Neither should you," he replied, half grinning. A pause. The kind that stretches between strangers who both carry too many untold stories. "Why are you helping me?" she finally asked. He looked up at the rain dripping off the umbrella's edge. "Because someone once did the same for me." Thunder rolled in the distance. The wind tugged at his sleeves. He offered the umbrella's handle to her fully now. "Take it," he said. "I've got the awning." Her hand hovered over the handle, trembling slightly. She whispered, almost to herself, "You sure?" The woman finally took the umbrella, her fingers closed around the worn plastic handle with a kind of hesitation that felt heavier than gratitude, as if she wasn't used to receiving kindness without strings. The man simply nodded and stepped back toward the bakery's awning. Rain instantly coated his shoulders, plastering the thin fabric to his skin. But his face didn't flinch. Instead, for a moment it looked lighter. The woman turned, shielding herself beneath the crooked umbrella. She took a few steps, paused, then turned halfway back, catching his gaze across the rain between them. "Thank you," she called over the downpour. He raised a hand in reply. She smiled, small, tired but real, and then walked on. Her silhouette grew smaller with each step, eventually swallowed by the curtain of silver rain. He stood still, shivering, watching her vanish into the storm. For a few seconds, the world felt quieter, not silent, just hushed, like it was listening. He slid back under the awning and sat down on the crate. Rainwater dripped from his sleeves. He wiped his forehead with the inside of his elbow, sighing softly. Despite the chill biting at his bones, his eyes carried something warmer now, the kind of glow that only comes from doing something right, even when you have nothing. Across the street, headlights cut through the rain like white fire. A sleek black SUV pulled up slowly, its engine humming low and even. The windows were tinted, impossibly dark, too clean, too expensive for this part of the city. It didn't stop. Not yet, just rolled to a crawl, as if watching. He squinted through the rain, trying to see who was inside. The SUV slowed, then stopped. The SUV idled for a few moments longer, then pulled away. No window rolled down. No gesture made, just silence and taillights swallowed by mist. The man exhaled, slow and tight, as if something he hadn't dared to hope for had brushed past without stopping. His stomach growled, the kind of hollow ache that bent inward, curling around his ribs. He waited until the street emptied, then made his way to the diner dumpster 2 blocks down. The rain had lightened now, just a misting drizzle that clung to his hair and eyelashes. Steam from nearby vents painted soft strokes in the night air. He lifted the dumpster lid with practiced ease, wincing at the sour tang of yesterday's meals. Carefully, he fished through paper bags, his hands working fast and quiet. A half-eaten roll, a sealed packet of crackers, a slice of pie still in a plastic container. He sat beneath a flickering street lamp and unwrapped the pie, breaking off small bites with calloused fingers. The first taste was sharp with vinegar from someone's tossed salad. But he didn't complain. As he chewed, he hummed, low and warm, barely audible, a melody older than his circumstances. "You are my sunshine. My only sunshine." His voice cracked halfway through the verse, but he didn't stop. He closed his eyes, remembering a tiny girl with wild curls sitting cross-legged on a hardwood floor, clapping along as he sang and cooked eggs in a tiny pan. The memory faded. The cold settled back in. He stood to leave, then paused. Something was on the crate where he'd been sitting earlier, wrapped in foil, dry, fresh. A folded note lay on top in neat handwriting. "Thank you." His eyes scanned the empty sidewalk, but no one was there. Only the sound of rain. And that song, still humming in his chest. By nightfall, the rain returned with a vengeance. He shuffled past shuttered shops and blinking street signals until he found himself in front of the old brick church on 12th. The heavy wooden doors were cracked open, golden light spilling from within. His breath misted as he stood at the edge, hesitant. Inside, the warmth hit him like memory. Candles flickered beside worn pews. A woman prayed softly in the far corner. A janitor in blue coveralls swept near the altar, humming an off-key hymn. The man stepped in, dripping water onto the entry tile. He nodded respectfully at the janitor. "Just warming up," he whispered. The janitor squinted, then offered a tight smile. "You know the rule. Keep quiet, stay dry, don't touch the candles." The man nodded. He settled onto the last pew, tugging off his damp cap, placing it beside him. For the first time in days, he felt the ache in his feet lessen. The silence of the church wrapped around him like a second skin. He leaned back, eyes fluttering, but stayed awake. His body never truly rested anymore, only paused between battles. Up ahead, the janitor disappeared into the side hall. A moment later, muffled voices drifted out. The church echoed faintly. "He really gave it away? Just like that?" "Yeah, some old umbrella. Said it was all he had. Boss said he wants him found. Said it matters." What kind of man takes a homeless guy seriously? The kind with a private jet parked in silence. The man froze. He shifted slightly in the pew, heart thumping in his chest. A strange chill passed through him. Not from the rain this time. He leaned forward, listening. Footsteps echoed in the hall. Then, he was right here. Where'd he go? He ducked behind the thick wooden pillar near the side aisle. Not out of fear, but instinct, the kind you develop when the world stops using your name and starts calling you, "Hey," or "Move along." He clutched his cap in his lap and let the candlelight flicker across his face. "They're looking for me," he thought. "But they don't even know my name." It had been years since anyone said it out loud. Not even the soup kitchen lists used it anymore. Just initials and meals served. The world had slowly unstitched him from its pages, until he became a whisper in the corner of a map. No ID, no phone, no proof that he existed beyond the pavement he slept on, and the piano chords still buried in his fingertips. He used to think names were permanent, like scars or fingerprints. But out here, names melted in the rain. What stayed was how people looked away, how they stepped around your story. A door creaked open. He froze. Voices moved closer. "He came in about an hour ago," the priest was saying. "Middle-aged, quiet, kept to himself." "That's him," came the voice. Low, warm, familiar. The man's spine stiffened. It was him, the stranger from the storm, the one he'd given the umbrella to. Why's he looking for me? What could a man like that want from someone like me? He rose quietly, stepping deeper into the corridor shadows, breath held tight between his ribs. His heart pounded. Not from danger, but from something scarier than that. Attention, the kind that doesn't forget you. The stranger's voice echoed again, softer now, reverent, almost certain. He changed something in me. I need to find him. The man stood just inside the stone archway leading to the church's back exit. The stranger's voice echoed through the nave, slow and sincere. If he's still here, tell him. The offer still stands. The man stepped out of the shadows. I'm here. The stranger turned, startled for only a second before a quiet smile took over his face. He wasn't dressed like the night before. No longer rain-soaked, no longer anonymous. His coat was long and tailored, collar upturned, a silver pin at the lapel. The kind of man who belonged in meetings, not missions. You found me, the man said cautiously. No, the stranger replied. You found me, with that umbrella, and it stayed with me. The man shifted. I didn't expect anyone to come looking. I didn't expect to be changed by one act of kindness, the stranger said, voice low. They stood in the church aisle now, beneath colored glass windows that painted their faces in fractured light. The priest watched from a respectful distance. I don't want anything, the man said. I'm not here to take, the stranger interrupted. I'm here to give. A ride, a meal, a conversation. Maybe more, if you're willing. The man looked him up and down. You don't even know me. I know what kind of person gives their only umbrella away in a storm. A pause. The man's mouth opened, but no words came. Outside, the SUV pulled up again. Slow, silent. The stranger stepped aside and opened the church door, letting cold air flood in. Come with me, he said gently. Just for a while. The man took a step forward, stopped, and stared at the car door. Cracked open, warm light glowing from within. The SUV's door eased shut behind him with a soft, luxurious click, a sound so unfamiliar it startled him more than a slamming one would have. He sat stiffly, shoulders hunched forward as if waiting to be told he didn't belong. The leather was butter-smooth beneath him, its scent rich and clean. Like money, like memory. A small console in front of him glowed with gentle ambient light. No trash, no stains, not even dust. The stranger climbed in beside him, calm, quiet. He didn't speak at first, neither did the driver. The silence inside the car was thick, insulated, so unlike the street noise outside. It made the man feel naked, every wrinkle in his coat suddenly louder than any word. He shifted in his seat, clutching the strap of his worn duffel bag like it was a shield. Don't worry, the stranger said gently, as if reading the tension off his posture. You're safe here. The man nodded but said nothing. His fingers traced the stitching on the seat. He couldn't remember the last time he'd been inside a vehicle that wasn't a bus or an ambulance. And this felt like another world entirely. The hum of the engine was smooth, nearly imperceptible. Outside, the city blurred past, neon reflected on wet pavement, buildings slipping behind tinted glass like silent ghosts. The man looked down at his hands, cracked and rough against the perfection around him. He half expected the leather to reject him like the city had. The driver's voice broke the quiet. Airstrip's 15 minutes out. Should be smooth flying. The man turned sharply. Airstrip? The stranger offered a small smile. I told you it was just the beginning. The hum of the SUV lulled him into silence. But silence, that was dangerous. That's when memory crept in. He blinked once, slowly, and the car vanished, replaced by rushing water. It was a basement apartment. Walls thin, carpet always damp, but it was home. He stood at the window, rain pounding against the glass. Outside, the streets had turned to rivers. Inside, he stacked books on plastic crates, his daughter's backpack zipped and ready at the door. Daddy, why's the bathtub downstairs? She was 5, standing in pink socks on the couch, watching the water creep in from under the door. He had smiled, tightly. "It's just a little rain, sweetheart. We're fine." But it wasn't fine. By midnight, the power was gone. The floor swam beneath their feet. He held her above the rising water, climbing onto the kitchen table, then the counter. She clung to his neck, soaked and sobbing. He banged on the ceiling, screamed. No one came. By the time rescue arrived, she was shivering, blue-lipped. He passed her up through the window to a man in uniform and slipped, trying to follow. They pulled her away fast. The current pulled him down. When he emerged days later, barefoot, coughing mud, she was gone. Not dead, just disappeared into the system. He had no address to give. No money, no papers. Just a name too easily erased from hospital records. He never saw her again. Back in the car, his eyes opened. The air felt thinner now. His hand rested against the window, fingertips trembling. He whispered the words before he could stop them. "I haven't flown in 20 years." The stranger didn't turn his head, just nodded, as if he already knew why. The SUV glided past the city limits, headlights slicing through mist as tall iron fences and cracked industrial buildings gave way to long stretches of open road. Inside, the stranger finally broke the quiet. "Do you always give things away without asking for anything back?" The man didn't answer right away. His eyes stayed fixed on the window, the world outside smeared in wet streaks. "Only the things I don't need anymore," he replied. The stranger turned slightly in his seat. "That umbrella looked like the only thing you had that worked." The man's lips tugged into the hint of a smile. "Exactly." Another pause. "What's your name?" the stranger asked. He didn't answer. "I get it," the stranger said, unfazed. "Names are heavy. Sometimes it's easier not to carry one." Still silence. "But everyone carries something," the stranger continued. "Memories, regrets, songs." That last word pulled something loose. The man turned, brow creased. "Songs?" The stranger's voice softened. "You hummed something, at the edge of a curb. Quiet but honest. You didn't think anyone was listening." "I wasn't singing," the man said quickly. "Just remembering." "Who was she?" The man stiffened. "You sang to someone once," the stranger continued gently. "I heard it in your voice. Not just melody, memory. That kind of sound doesn't come from emptiness." The man's throat tightened. His fingers clenched the duffel bag at his feet. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Don't I?" the stranger asked, eyes calm. "You're not just some man on the street." The man looked away. The lights from a passing street lamp painted his face in golden lines, worn, weathered, but not erased. The stranger leaned back. "We'll be there soon," he said. "You'll see why this matters." The man didn't speak, but his heart was no longer still. The SUV slowed as the rain tapered into a fine mist. Beyond a tall security gate, floodlights bathed the asphalt in gold. The vehicle rolled past without stopping. The guard simply nodded, recognizing the man in the back seat. The gate opened without a word. Inside, silence hung over a sleek private airstrip. The runway stretched endlessly into the gray morning, and at the center, waiting like something out of a memory too rich to believe, a jet. Not just any jet. Glossy, white, edges clean as folded paper. Its stairway extended as if it had been expecting someone all night. The SUV pulled up beside it and stopped. The man stared, jaw slack. He reached for the door handle, hesitated, then pushed it open. Cool wind brushed his face as he stepped out. The scent of jet fuel, sea air, and fresh rain mingled in the breeze. He squinted at the plane. Its engines purred low, not loud, not screaming, just steady, like it had nothing to prove. The stranger stepped beside him. "Beautiful, isn't it?" The man's voice caught in his throat. "This is yours?" The stranger didn't look at him. He looked forward. Calm. "No," he said softly. "It's yours today." The man turned toward him, disbelieving. "What do you mean, mine?" "You gave me your umbrella," the stranger replied. "Now I'm giving you something back." "But this?" The man gestured wide. "I don't even have a place to sleep." "Maybe you're not meant to sleep," the stranger said, stepping toward the stairs. Maybe you're meant to go." The man stood frozen. The jet door was open. The lights inside glowed warmly. It was the first doorway in years that hadn't looked like an exit. He stood at the base of the jet stairs, every step above him gleaming like polished bone. Wind stirred his coat as he stared up. The interior glowed warmly. Leather seats, soft lights, rich wood panels. It looked like something from a different life, one he'd never touched, one that never touched him. He backed up. "I can't go in there." The stranger, halfway up the steps, turned. "Why not?" The man shook his head. "Because I'm not that guy. I'm not the kind of man who flies private. I'm the kind who sleeps behind gas stations and gets chased away from benches." "Not today," the man laughed, short, bitter. "Do you have any idea how long it's been since I was allowed through a front door without being watched?" "You're not being watched," the stranger said gently. "You're being welcomed." "That doesn't feel real," he snapped. "Nothing about this does." He gestured toward the runway, the plane, the impossible offer sitting in front of him like an insult wrapped in velvet. "I've got nothing to my name. I'm not clean. I'm not fixed. You don't even know what I've lost." The stranger descended slowly, stopping just one step above ground level. "You don't have to be fixed," he said. "You just have to be willing." They stood there face to face, one soaked in years of cold, the other dry and open-handed. "You helped me in the rain," the stranger said quietly. "Now let me help you in the sky." Silence. A gust of wind rustled the man's threadbare coat. He looked at the steps again, still unsure if they were a staircase or a cliff. He stood at the threshold for what felt like hours. Though only moments passed, rain misted his shoulders. The wind whispered doubts. The steps stared back like a challenge. Then, 1 foot forward. The first step groaned slightly under his weight. Then the second. His hand gripped the polished rail, fingers twitching as if afraid they'd leave dirt on it. He climbed slowly, every inch of him tense, like he expected someone to shout from behind. "Not you! Not you!" No one did. Inside, the air smelled like cedar and citrus, warm, clean, safe. He stood at the entrance, eyes darting around, leather seats stitched by hand, cabinets with real glassware, a rug soft enough to sleep on. "Sit anywhere," the stranger said, stepping around him. "No one's judging you here." He didn't sit right away. He touched the back of a chair, as if making sure it wouldn't vanish when he blinked. Then, cautiously, he lowered himself into the nearest seat. Silence. He closed his eyes and let out a slow breath. Outside, the engines rumbled to life. The whir grew stronger, deeper. A vibration that reached into his chest and settled beneath his ribs. The runway lights stretched ahead like a golden river. "This isn't real," he whispered. "It is," the stranger replied. "You're just not used to being seen." The man turned to him. "Why are you doing this?" The stranger didn't answer directly. Instead, he looked out the window, voice quiet. "There's someone waiting for you. You'll see when we land." The man frowned. "Who?" The stranger gave a soft smile. "You'll know her when you hear her play." The jet lifted off with the grace of something that had never touched the earth. The man pressed his hand to the window, watching the city dissolve beneath them. The alleys, the gutters, the flickering streetlights, now just soft patterns swallowed by clouds. Up here there was no hunger, no names, just sky. He rested his head back against the seat. For a moment, he let the silence cradle him. Then it came, uninvited but welcome. The memory. Her tiny fingers clutched his arm in the middle seat of a budget flight. Her face lit up as the wheels lifted off the tarmac. "We're flying, Daddy! We're flying!" He'd smiled, pressing his cheek to her wild curls. "Like birds," he said. "Like music," she corrected, lifting her arms. "We're notes on a big song." She always talked like that. Like metaphors were her first language. Like air had rhythm. "What kind of song?" he asked. She closed her eyes, beaming. "One where nobody falls." Back in the present, his breath caught. He hadn't been in the air since that day. Since the court hearing. since she was taken. For years he'd avoided flights, trains, movement, as if standing still could undo what had happened. Now, here he was, floating above everything he'd ever lost. The stranger broke the silence. "You okay?" The man nodded once, eyes still locked on the clouds. "You were a music teacher, weren't you?" The man turned. "How do you know that?" The stranger didn't answer, just pulled a small suitcase from the overhead bin and set it gently on the seat between them. "It's time," he said softly. "There's something you should see." The suitcase was navy blue, clean but worn at the edges. The kind of luggage that had seen concert halls and hotel lobbies, not bus stops or shelters. The stranger didn't speak, just gave a small nod. The man's hands hovered over the latch, hesitant. His fingers trembled not from fear but from memory, the kind that knows opening one thing can unearth everything. With a soft click, the suitcase unlocked. He lifted the lid. The smell hit first, soft, familiar. Lavender, or maybe rose, like the drawers where children's keepsakes are tucked away and forgotten until they're needed again. Inside, it wasn't money, or clean clothes, or false hope. It was music, dozens of neatly stacked sheet pages, handwritten notations in purple ink, small doodles in the margins, stars, suns, little cats, and beneath the papers, something heavier, a framed photo. He picked it up slowly. His breath stopped. It was her. Older, yes, but still her. Those same fierce eyes. The curls now longer, swept to the side. She stood in front of a piano, mid-performance, hands blurred in motion. Her smile was faint, almost shy, but powerful. He blinked, as if the image might vanish. The stranger finally spoke. "She's a prodigy," he said softly. "But not because of lessons. Because of you." The man kept staring. "I thought I lost her." "You did," the stranger replied. "But not completely." His fingers tightened around the frame. His mouth opened, but no words came. "Why show me this now?" he finally whispered. The stranger leaned in. "Because she's waiting for you. And because no one ever forgets." The first song they were given. The man's grip softened. A single tear rolled down his cheek. The man clutched the photo like it might vanish if he blinked. His breath quickened. "Where did you get this?" The stranger's voice stayed level. "It was given to me." "By who?" The question cracked like thunder. The cabin seemed to shrink, air thick with years of questions finally rising to the surface. The man stood abruptly, his knees brushing the seat in front of him. "Tell me now." The stranger didn't move. "Sit, please." But he didn't. Not yet. He held the photo out like a weapon. "This is my daughter. I'd know that look anywhere. You don't just find pictures like this." "No," the stranger agreed. "You're right. You earn them." That stopped him. The man stared, eyes narrowing. "What does that mean?" The stranger finally exhaled. "She didn't send the photo. Someone else did. Someone who's looked after her. Someone who remembers your song." A beat of silence. The jet hummed steadily beneath them, uncaring. "She remembers me?" The words came out small, like a boy's. The stranger's tone softened. In pieces, in melody, in fragments of bedtime songs and piano chords. "She plays what she doesn't know how to say." The man's shoulders slumped, sinking into the nearest seat like his strength had folded inward. "She thinks I left." "She thinks you're lost," the stranger corrected. "Not gone, not dead, just missing." A silence heavier than grief settled between them. "I didn't choose to disappear," the man whispered. "I know," the stranger said. "That's why I'm here." The man looked down again at the photo, her eyes, her hands, the piano. "Where are we going?" he asked quietly. The stranger leaned back, eyes steady. "To the place where your melody still lives." The jet touched down on a private runway, nestled between hills and whispering trees. No city skyline, no noise, just open sky and soft earth. The man stepped onto the tarmac, squinting against the sunrise bleeding over the horizon. He expected another car, a long hallway, maybe a hotel. Instead, they walked, down a cobbled path wrapped in ivy and silence. The air smelled of pine and something else, faintly floral, like a memory tucked in the folds of linen. Then he saw it. Not a mansion, not some high-rise palace. A studio. Modern glass front, framed in oak and stone, perched quietly on a hill like it had always belonged. Its large windows revealed glimpses inside. Pianos, violins hanging on the walls, shelves of vinyl records and handwritten sheet music pinned like art. The door was open. He hesitated at the threshold. The floor inside was polished wood. Sunlight spilled across it in wide golden beams. No reception desk, no guards, just music waiting in the air. As they entered, his eyes caught on the grand piano in the corner. Matte black, ivory keys glowing under the light. He stepped toward it without meaning to. "She's played that one," the stranger said, pointing. "Who?" The stranger didn't answer, just looked toward a hallway lined with acoustic panels and old posters of youth orchestras and jazz trios. From somewhere deeper in the building, a piano began to play. Soft, deliberate, familiar. The man froze mid-step. His throat went dry. It was the lullaby, the one only two people on earth knew, the one he sang when the lights flickered in their apartment, when thunder scared her, when dinner was canned and love had to be enough. She was here, and she was playing his song. His feet stopped moving, but his heart sprinted backward, not just years, but lifetimes. The apartment was dim, lit only by kitchen light and hope. His daughter sat on a stool too tall for her legs. Her feet swung freely as her hands hovered over plastic keyboard keys. Mismatched sounds, cheap speakers, missing notes. Still, she played like she was touching magic. He knelt beside her, guiding her fingers, pressing softly. "Feel it," he said. "Don't just play. Listen." She looked up at him with eyes that trusted too easily, too completely. "But it's not perfect. It's not supposed to be," he whispered, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. "Neither are we." She giggled and leaned her head on his shoulder. He wrapped an arm around her, letting the song drift between them. Broken, beautiful, theirs. That night he cooked eggs and toast while she hummed the melody on loop. Even the silence between notes felt like home. But the next day, the knock on the door, the social worker's voice, the paper in her hand, the judgment that came with clothes worn too thin, a fridge too empty, a paycheck too late. They said it was temporary, that she'd be safer elsewhere. They never returned her lullaby. Back in the studio, he leaned against the wall, steadying himself as the melody echoed. Stronger now, refined, but still unmistakably the one she used to stumble through with sticky fingers. She remembered it, he said, barely above a whisper. The stranger stood beside him, arms crossed loosely. "She never stopped playing it," he replied. "She plays your lullaby every week, even when she doesn't know why." The man swallowed hard, the notes wrapping around his chest like arms he'd waited years to feel again. The music stopped, not abruptly. It faded like a candle's last breath, soft and lingering, leaving a hush that felt holy. The man stood frozen outside the studio's main room, one hand pressed to the wall as if steadying his heartbeat. "She's here," he whispered. "Yes," the stranger said behind him. A door clicked open further down the hallway. Footsteps echoed. Soft, measured, deliberate. A woman appeared in the doorway, mid-50s. Elegant without being showy. Her gray hair was pinned back in a way that suggested discipline, but her eyes carried warmth like firelight. She looked at him with quiet recognition. Not surprise, not pity. "Hello," she said. He nodded cautiously. "Do I know you?" "Not really," she replied. "But I've known of you for a long time." He tilted his head. "How?" She stepped closer. "I was her music instructor. Before I became her guardian." Those words hung heavy in the air. His breath hitched. She needed a guardian? She needed a place that didn't remind her of everything she'd lost, the woman said gently. But she never let go of the music. Not once. She studied him carefully. "She carried your song even when she forgot your face." He blinked, trying to hold himself together. "Does she know I'm here?" "Not yet," the woman replied. "But she's been playing that melody every week since she learned how to sit at a piano." He swallowed, voice cracking. "Does she want to see me?" The woman's expression softened, almost into a smile. "She doesn't know she needs to, but she will." She held out her hand. "If you're ready, I'll take you to her." The man looked at her hand, hesitant, trembling, but this time, he didn't step back. The hallway narrowed as they approached the end. The woman led him with slow, reverent steps, her heels silent against the polished wood. The air shifted, quieter, heavier, sacred, in a way that didn't need candles or scripture, just keys and rhythm and memory. They stopped in front of a wide studio window, a large pane of soundproof glass, slightly tinted. Beyond it, a rehearsal room bloomed with soft light and quiet movement. And there she was, his daughter, no longer the little girl with sticky fingers and cereal in her hair. Now, poised, focused, graceful. She sat at the grand piano, back straight, brows gently furrowed, her hands moving fluidly across the keys. Her fingers fluttered, paused, returned. She wasn't just playing the song, she was arguing with it, answering it, shaping it like clay. He stepped closer to the glass, pressed his fingertips to it. His breath fogged the surface. His heart clenched. The room was silent to him, but he didn't need sound. He could feel it. Every note, his lullaby. Still hers. She paused mid-phrase, correcting a mistake with a furrowed brow, then exhaled and restarted the passage. Slower, deeper this time. She chewed her bottom lip, just like her mother used to. His eyes brimmed. I don't know what to say," he murmured. The woman beside him said softly, "You don't have to. Not yet." He leaned closer. She played the final line, the closing of the lullaby. Then her fingers lifted from the keys. She froze, not in rhythm, but instinct. She turned slowly toward the window, eyes narrowing. She couldn't see him clearly, but something told her she was being watched by someone who used to hold her whole world in his hands. He stepped back from the glass like it had burned him. The look in her eyes, unsure, curious, wasn't rejection. But it wasn't recognition either. That was somehow worse. He turned quickly. "I can't do this." The woman reached for his arm. "Wait, no," his voice cracked. I thought if I saw her, if I heard the song, but she didn't see me. She looked right through the glass and didn't know me. She hasn't seen you since she was a child." "That doesn't matter," he snapped, then softened. A part of her should have known. His chest rose and fell too fast now, panic bubbling in his throat. "I was her father. I held her every night. I gave her music. You also disappeared." "I was taken from her," he said sharply. "I didn't leave. I lost everything. I lost her." He staggered toward the hallway. "I shouldn't have come. I've polluted this place just by walking in." "She wouldn't be playing if not for you," the woman said gently. But he was already moving. Down. The hall. Out the door. Into the late morning air. The sun had broken through the clouds. The wind smelled of honeysuckle, but he didn't notice. His feet moved on instinct, not toward the car, not toward shelter, just away. His mind screamed that he didn't belong, that some gifts, even when remembered, should stay buried. Behind him, the studio door creaked open. "Sir!" a voice called. He kept walking. Then, wait! It wasn't the stranger or the woman. It was her, feminine, young, familiar. His daughter's voice, older now, but carrying that same trembling strength he remembered from the nights she used to ask for one more song. He froze. He turned slowly. She stood several feet away, breathless, cautious, her hands curled into loose fists at her sides. The wind tugged gently at her sweater, pulling strands of hair across her face. He hadn't seen her like this before. Not behind glass, not frozen in a photo. Alive. present. 1,000 words lodged in his throat. But she spoke first. Why did you run? His mouth opened. Nothing came. You saw me, she said, stepping closer. You stood there and watched me play. And then you ran. I didn't. I wasn't trying to. You didn't think I'd recognize you, right? She said, voice rising. You thought you could just watch from a distance, like always. His face tightened. I didn't know if I should come. Then why did you? She snapped. Why now? He took a shaky breath. Because I thought you forgot me. Forgot you? She echoed, bitter. I tried to forget the lullaby. I tried to forget the way you made up words when you couldn't afford sheet music. I tried to forget how warm your hand felt when I fell asleep at the piano bench. Her eyes burned. But some songs stay. He blinked fast, chest trembling. I never meant to leave you, he said. But you did, she replied. You left me in the hands of strangers. You vanished. I was 5, she said, voice breaking. I didn't know laws. I didn't know systems. I only knew one thing. She stepped forward now, voice cracking at the seams. I waited at the shelter for weeks. That last word shattered the silence between them, and the man broke. His knees buckled as if those words carried physical weight. I waited at the shelter for weeks. He stumbled to the edge of a bench near the courtyard, breath hitching. She didn't follow, just stood there, arms folded tightly across her chest like they were holding her together. I didn't leave you, he said, voice hoarse. Not the way you think, she said nothing. Her silence demanded honesty. I lost my job. The storm hit. The apartment flooded. And the second they saw me sleeping in a shelter, they said I was unfit. Just like that. They took you. You could have fought. I tried, he choked. But I didn't have a lawyer. I didn't have anyone. And every time I got close to you, someone pushed me back. He looked up, tears filling the cracks in his voice. I had nothing left. No home, no papers, not even my name on file. They erased me like I never mattered. And all I could hold on to. He reached into his coat and pulled out something. Wrinkled, old, and carefully folded. The crayon drawing, 2 stick figures, 1 umbrella, 1 sun. Her lips parted. I kept this, he whispered. Even when I was starving. Even when I was sleeping under cardboard. I kept it. Because I thought, maybe if you still remembered the song, you'd remember me. She stepped closer, slowly now. I did, she said quietly. He looked up, barely breathing. I didn't forget your voice, or the way you tapped rhythm into my shoulders. She was crying now, softly, and I didn't stop playing your song. He reached for her hand with trembling fingers. I never stopped singing your song. The sun had shifted now, higher in the sky, warmer. A soft breeze passed between them, scattering petals from the courtyard trees like confetti the world hadn't waited to throw. He sat quietly on the bench, his hands resting on his knees, still holding the drawing between his fingers, like it might dissolve if he let go. She sat across from him on a low stone planter, knees together, elbows on thighs, eyes distant. No one spoke for a long time. Then her voice cut through. Small, but steady. Did you ever stop playing? He shook his head. Only when I didn't have a piano. She looked toward the studio. There's one inside. He followed her gaze. I know, he said. She stood slowly, brushing off her jeans. Come with me. He hesitated. She turned back. I want to hear it. From you. The words landed soft as feathers, but he felt the weight of them in his chest. He rose, legs unsure, like a man walking into a place he once called holy. Inside, the studio was empty now, just the piano, waiting like it always had. She sat down first, her fingers resting lightly on the keys, not pressing, just feeling. He joined her, settling beside her on the bench. The silence between them wasn't awkward anymore. It was sacred. She began the first notes of the lullaby. Shaky, raw. He joined in, his left hand sliding into the bass line like it had never forgotten its path. Together, they played. It wasn't perfect, but it was whole. 15 years unraveled in a few bars, and when they reached the final note, they let it linger. A silence followed. Not empty, just finally full. The dining hall shimmered under low chandeliers. Gold light cast in delicate pools across marble floors and velvet chairs. Every table was dressed like royalty might arrive any moment. Crystal glasses, silver forks, napkins folded like art. He stood just inside the doorway, clothes still rumpled from days past, boots dusted with forgotten miles. "Come on," she said gently, taking his hand. He let her lead. It was her world now. Stages and studios, wine and whispered names, not the cracked tiles of shelter kitchens or the paper plate meals he'd grown used to. She introduced him around. People smiled politely, shook his hand, complimented her talent, but no one looked him in the eyes for more than a second. Some leaned away as if poverty was contagious. He sat at the long table beside her, hands folded in his lap, trying not to touch the glass. Everything felt too clean, too polished, like even his breath might leave a mark. The food came in small, perfect arrangements. He didn't recognize half of it. He focused on her, the way she laughed now, soft and graceful. How she touched her water glass with just 2 fingers. Grown up, elegant, a stranger he somehow still knew. Then, from across the table, laughter. 2 men, dressed sharp. One leaned toward the other, nodding toward him. "Who brought the history project?" "Thought this was a benefit dinner, not a documentary shoot." Another chuckle. Forks clinked, a sideways glance. He felt it like a slap. Not from the words, but from the fact that they weren't surprised he didn't belong. He lowered his eyes to the plate. Suddenly the food didn't taste like anything at all. The sound of laughter at the table blurred into background noise. He picked at his plate, but his mind had already left the room, yanked back by memory like a hook behind his ribs. Fluorescent lights, white walls, a judge's voice like concrete. He sat alone at the defendant's table, wearing the same button-up shirt he wore to job interviews. It was ironed, though the cuffs had frayed. Across from him sat 2 attorneys in expensive suits and pressed collars, arguing not about money or crime but about whether he was enough. "Your Honor, Mr. Hayes has no permanent residence, no vehicle, no reliable employment. He has a documented history of instability." "He's her father," he'd said, standing suddenly, voice trembling. "I raised her. I fed her when no one else would. I taught her everything I had." The judge didn't look up right away, just turned the page of a report. The social worker cleared her throat. "The child is adapting well in care. She's showing promise in music, structure, and peer connection. We recommend placement remain unchanged." He had tried to speak again, but the judge raised a hand, and then came the words, quiet, final. "You didn't look like a father. Not, you didn't act like one, not you failed. Just look, as if fatherhood could be measured by collars and coins." The gavel didn't. Slam. It sighed. And that was it. Back at the dinner table, his eyes refocused. The crystal glasses, the cufflinks, the soft voices and cold smiles. He reached up and tugged his collar gently. The same shirt he'd worn every Sunday since he found it in a donation bin. They still didn't think he looked like a father, but they never heard him play. After dinner, the guests drifted into soft jazz and small talk. He moved outside, shoulders heavy, breath visible in the crisp night air. The moon hung low over the hills, half shaded, like even it wasn't sure if it belonged. He heard footsteps behind him. "I thought I lost you back there," the familiar voice said. He turned. The stranger, the man who'd picked him up, fed him, flown him, stood with hands in his pockets, no tie, coat unbuttoned. "I needed air," the father replied, "and distance." "I get that," the stranger said, stepping beside him. The silence stretched, not awkward, just honest. "So," the father finally asked, "what's your role in all this, really?" The stranger smiled faintly. I figured you'd ask eventually. He pulled something from his pocket, a folded program from a past concert. At the bottom, under artistic direction, Elias Marek, personal manager to Avery Hale. The father stared. His daughter's name. Next to his name. You manage her? He asked, stunned. For 3 years now, Elias said. Ever since she was accepted into the Hillstone Conservatory. She doesn't just play anymore. She composes. She teaches. She's a force. The man's voice was thin. You knew who I was the whole time? From the moment you handed me that umbrella. Why didn't you say anything? Elias looked him straight in the eye. Because I needed to see who you still were without her name in the room. A pause. Everything you gave her. Your voice. Your melody. It's still in her. She is you, whether she knows it or not. The father looked down, emotion rising like a tide. Then Elias added, almost reverently, She sent me to find you. They sat at a wrought iron table under a string of warm lights. The night air had settled into stillness. Crickets hummed somewhere out in the tall grass. Elias slid an envelope across the table. No strings, just dignity, a way to stand on your own. The father stared at it. Inside, a check, too many zeros for a man who hadn't seen more than spare change in years. What is this? He asked quietly. Call it a bridge, Elias replied. A way to give you space, time, options. If you want to disappear again, do it with something in your pocket this time. The man's fingers hovered above the envelope. You think I'll leave, he said. I think you're scared you'll fail her again. That hit harder than he expected. He leaned back, eyes fixed on the soft light glinting off the glass in Elias's hand. What if she only remembers the good parts? He murmured. What if this ruins it? Elias said nothing, just waited. The man finally picked up the envelope, peeled it open, pulled out the check. He looked at the name on it. His name. The one the world had almost erased. He took a long breath. Then, slowly, deliberately, he tore the check in half, and then again, and again. The pieces fluttered to the table like dead leaves. I'm not running, he said. Not again. Elias nodded, not surprised. She'll be glad to hear that. The man wiped his hands together like dusting off the past. I don't need a bridge, he said. I've got a song. And somewhere inside, for the first time in years, he felt like maybe he was worth hearing again. The next morning, light spilled into the kitchen of the guest house where he'd been offered a warm bed, fresh clothes and silence. The kind that didn't judge. He stood by the window, coffee untouched, watching birds skip across the gravel outside. The warmth of everything felt distant, as if he didn't want to accept it fully. A knock came, soft, tentative. He turned. She stood in the doorway. Her curls were pulled back into a loose bun, a folder tucked under her arm, eyes cautious but not closed. Hey, she said. Hey, he echoed. She stepped into the room, glancing around like she wasn't sure if she was intruding. I have something coming up. Tomorrow night, he tilted his head. A recital, she continued. Just a small one. Students, instructors, some donors. She looked at him now, fully. And I want you to come. His lips parted, but he didn't speak. You don't have to sit in front, she added quickly, or even stay the whole time. I want you there. He stepped forward slowly. Why? She shrugged. Because I used to play to feel close to you. Now, I want you to hear it. Really hear it. Not through windows. The silence between them was no longer cold. It was careful, like hands relearning how to hold something fragile. He gave a soft smile. You sure? She smiled back, small but certain. Only if you promise not to hide again. He nodded. Once. Deeply. I promise. He found the stairs behind the guest house. Narrow, creaky, winding up to a rooftop no one seemed to use anymore. The sun was low, bleeding orange and rose across the hills. Trees swayed softly in the wind, and from up here, the world looked forgiving. He sat on the ledge, arms folded, the sky stretching endlessly above him, like a song still unwritten. No spotlight, no glass, just quiet. There were days I didn't think I'd make it. He whispered to no one. Days where a bruised apple felt like a feast. Nights where cardboard was shelter, and silence was the only thing that didn't leave. He'd walked past 1,000 people, and none of them saw him. Until one did. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out the folded crayon drawing. Still there, edges softer now, colors faded, but not gone. "You kept me alive more than you'll ever know," he murmured, tracing the umbrella between the stick figures. A soft gust passed through, catching the edges of the paper. He held it tight. "All I had was your memory, your song, and the rain." He closed his eyes, and for a moment, he was back under that awning. The storm screaming, the umbrella shaking in his hand, and a stranger stopping instead of walking past. He opened his eyes again. The clouds were turning lavender now. He smiled. Not bitter, not broken, real. Rain saved me that day. The sky held on to the last streaks of color. And beneath it, for the first time in a long time, he felt ready. Tomorrow, he would hear her play again. Not from behind glass, but beside her. The concert hall stood at the edge of town, framed by stone arches and ivy-laced walls. Inside, people gathered with coats and conversations. Programs folded in hand. The soft buzz of string tuning floating just beneath the hum of voices. But outside, the rain had returned, not heavy, not violent, gentle, almost familiar. He stood under the awning near the rear entrance, dressed in clean clothes that didn't quite feel like his yet, but they were his size, his shape, his choice. In one hand, he held something weathered and full of memory. An umbrella. The same umbrella. Mended now, carefully stitched with fishing line along one broken rib. Still lopsided, still worn, but whole, just like him. He looked up at the clouds and smiled. It was as if the sky remembered too. A soft wind danced past, brushing rain across his cheeks like fingers he used to know. He closed his eyes and breathed in the petrichor. Wet pavement, fresh leaves, spring rebirth. Behind him, the door creaked open. It was one of the volunteers, young in a black suit and red tie. "They're about to start. You sure you don't want to come through the front?" He shook his head. "No, this is where I belong tonight." The boy nodded and left him there. He turned back toward the rain and stepped out from under the awning. The drops touched his shoulders, his hair, his face. And still, he didn't raise the umbrella. He let it hang by his side, because this time, he wasn't hiding from the storm. He was walking into it. Inside, the recital hall gleamed like an untouched stage in a dream. Chandeliers spilled light across the rows of patrons dressed in black satin and pressed suits. Gold-trimmed programs rustled quietly in their hands. Conversations floated in hushed tones. Gallery donors, conservatory chairs, music critics. A world that never knew a night under cardboard. He slipped in quietly through the side entrance and took the farthest seat in the last row. No tuxedo, no cufflinks, just a clean button-up. Hands folded, posture still. No one noticed him, except her. She stood off stage in a pale blue dress, curls pulled back, fingers flexing slightly with nerves. Her eyes scanned the room, over the wealthy, the polished, the expected, and then they found him. Back row, hands in his lap, rain still clinging to his shoulders. She smiled, soft, honest, for no one else but him. The announcer stepped to the microphone. "Our final piece tonight is an original arrangement, a lullaby performed by Avery Hale, composed by her father." Gasps murmured through the room. The man's breath caught. She walked to the piano. Each step was graceful, but grounded. She sat, paused, looked toward the back once more. Their eyes locked. "This is for the one who gave me music before I had words," she said. "This is my father's song." She placed her hands on the keys, and the first note fell like a raindrop. Not quiet, but Intentional. A sound only a daughter could give. Back to the man who once carried her melody in a storm. The hall fell into a reverent hush. Then, the first chord. Not showy, not rushed, just real. A single melody blooming like spring from silence. He recognized it immediately. Not the polished edges she'd grown into, but the heart of it. The way the notes paused in the second measure, like she still remembered the timing he used when singing her to sleep. Every sound carried weight. He didn't blink, didn't move, couldn't. His fingers gripped the edge of the seat, not from tension, but to stay anchored, because he felt like he was floating. The past unfolded with every note, eggs sizzling in a pan while she hummed nearby, rain tapping a window during bedtime practice, her small hands pressing the wrong key and bursting into laughter, her voice, 5 years old, saying, "Again, Daddy, one more time," and then silence, years of it, until now. His throat burned, eyes welled. She hit the climax of the piece, a soft storm of arpeggios, delicate but strong, like a girl holding the memory of a man she once believed was gone. A single tear slid down his cheek. Then another. Not because it hurt, but because it healed. When she played the final note, she let it linger. It didn't fade. It settled, like a truth finally spoken. The hall erupted in applause. He didn't clap. He couldn't. His hands were covering his face now, eyes wet, breath shaking, but she didn't look at the front row or the balcony. She looked at him, and then she stood. She didn't bow. She stepped off the stage, down the aisle, toward the only man who hadn't applauded, because he was too busy remembering what it felt like to matter again. Applause thundered through the hall, sweeping over polished floors and crystal chandeliers. Hands clapped in unison, heads turned in admiration. A symphony of praise filling the space like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. But he didn't notice. His eyes were fixed on her, the girl who had become a woman before his eyes, hands trembling with the joy of connection. She wasn't just playing. She was speaking, confessing, embracing every lost year through the keys. The audience rose to their feet, calling out encouragement, faces flushed with admiration. Still, he didn't move. The applause became a wave crashing against him, a tide of recognition he had been denied for decades. He let it wash over him, but it didn't touch him. Not yet. His heart thumped like a drum in the quiet of his chest, echoing memories of empty streets, unanswered knocks, and silent nights spent in cardboard shelters. Then she stepped forward, and she whispered, soft enough for only him to hear, "You're not invisible anymore." The words weren't loud. They didn't need to be. The storm of sound around him faded into silence, leaving only that one truth, a truth he had been waiting years to hear. Every glance, every note, every tear he had shed in hidden corners of the city converged into a moment of recognition. He allowed himself a small, tentative smile. The applause continued, waves of it. But now it felt like it belonged to him as much as her. He inhaled, deep and steady, letting it fill him. This was the first time in a long while he understood. Some things can't be erased. Some melodies, some hearts, some fathers, they endure. And as the lights flickered softly over the hall, a quiet sense of triumph settled over him. The door behind the stage creaked open, letting a soft rush of cool air spill into the warm glow of the backstage corridor. He followed her, hesitant. Every step felt like crossing a river he had once tried and failed to swim. But she waited, just beyond the curtain, hands relaxed yet ready. Her eyes met his. No hesitation, no judgment, only recognition, only love that had been bottled for too long. "Dad?" she whispered. The word fell between them like rain on a tin roof, familiar and fragile. He didn't move at first. Then she closed the distance, arms wrapping around him in a grip he'd imagined 1,000 times in dreams, but never felt. Her head tucked against his chest, her weight pressed against him like a memory returned. He lowered his arms slowly, unsure if he should touch or let her hold him entirely. When he did, it was tentative, like testing the strength of a bridge built years ago. They swayed slightly, silent yet speaking volumes. "I never thought," she said softly, voice muffled. "I never thought I'd see you again." "I'm here," he said, words catching in his throat. "I'm not going anywhere." She pulled back just slightly, enough to look into his eyes. Tears streaked down both their faces, but hers held something stronger than grief. Determination. Joy. The reclaiming of lost years. "Come home, Dad," she whispered again. And in that moment he realized all the cold nights, the long streets, the lost years had led here, to warmth, to safety, to love restored. He nodded, almost unable to speak. "Yes," he said. "I'm coming home." The backstage lights flickered gently above them, shadows dancing on the walls. Outside, applause from the recital still lingered in the air. But here, in this quiet embrace, time had stopped. The hallway was quiet. Only the soft padding of their steps echoed, merging with faint residual notes from the concert hall behind them. The smell of polished wood and faint wax filled the air, a scent that tugged at memories he hadn't allowed himself to touch in years. She stopped at a door, small yet significant. Her hand rested on the knob, fingers brushing over the worn wood. She turned to him, a smile forming that held reassurance and mischief all at once. "Close your eyes," she said. He did, trusting her, as he hadn't trusted anyone in years. The world felt small in that brief moment. Rain, streets, time itself melted away. "Okay, you can look," he opened his eyes. The room was small but warm. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, hitting the grand piano in the center. Its black lacquer gleamed. The keys, pristine, shone in rows of ivory perfection. Everything was restored, polished, loved, and waiting, like it had been expecting him. He stepped closer, tentative, almost afraid it was a dream. The memories came flooding, teaching her scales, humming lullabies, tracing her fingers across the keys, waiting for her to hit the right notes. The echo of her laughter seemed to reverberate against the walls. She watched him, her eyes shining. "It's yours," she said softly. "I had it restored. For you. For us." He ran a hand across the top, feeling the smoothness beneath his palm. His chest rose with emotion he couldn't name. Words failed, as they often did in moments like this. Only sound could express it. Only music. And somewhere in the quiet, he heard it. The whisper of a melody that had never truly left. The old piano sat in the sunlight of a small studio, its keys still smooth, its sound rich and alive. He adjusted the bench, sitting tall, posture straightened with years of regained purpose. Across from him, a small child watched him nervously, a foster child new to music, shy and unsure. The boy's hands hovered above the keys as if touching the instrument might reveal truths he wasn't ready to hear. The man smiled softly. "Don't worry," he said. "The piano doesn't bite." The child hesitated, then pressed a key. A note rang out, shaky but honest. He chuckled softly, a sound that had been absent from his life for too long. "Good. That's the first step." He guided the boy's fingers gently, letting him feel the key's resistance, the melody waiting beneath each press. And as he taught, he realized he was teaching more than music. He was teaching patience, presence, a kind of resilience forged in rain and struggle, carried now into this small, bright room. When the boy's hand hesitated again, he hummed softly, a lullaby, familiar in every curve of the notes. The child's eyes widened. "That's beautiful," the boy whispered. "Yes," he said, voice full. "It's yours too. Let's start with the melody that saved my life." For a moment he let himself close his eyes. The air carried the faint echo of a piano long ago, a girl humming beside him, rain tapping the windows, and the warmth of a hand he thought he'd never hold again. He opened his eyes and smiled at the child. Music had returned, full circle, and for the first time, it wasn't just memory. It was living, and it was his to give again. The morning sun filtered through the window of his small apartment, warm and quiet, A steaming cup of coffee sat untouched on the table. He bent over the local paper, a stack delivered by the familiar hum of the postal worker. His eyes caught the headline immediately. From Shelter to Spotlight, a song for second chances. The photograph below it was unmistakable. A man, threadbare yet dignified, standing in the back row of a concert hall, eyes glistening, smile faint but radiant. Behind him, a young woman at the piano, hands poised over the keys, mid-performance, a perfect echo of his past, and a promise of the future. The article recounted the recital in detail. The young pianist, the melody inspired by her father, the extraordinary story of their reunion, and the man who had given away the umbrella that had unknowingly set the chain of events in motion. It spoke of kindness, persistence, and the power of music to heal both heart and soul. It celebrated not wealth or fame, but the courage to endure, and the humility to give again. He traced the headline with a finger, absorbing the words. "Second chances," he whispered. The rain outside tapped lightly against the window, soft and insistent, reminding him of where it all began. He folded the newspaper carefully, setting it aside with reverence. This wasn't just a story. It was validation, recognition, justice in its quietest form. For the first time in years, he felt seen. Not as a shadow, not as a number, not as someone forgotten, but as a father, as a man, as someone who mattered, and somewhere in the folds of that printed page, he found peace. The clouds gathered again that afternoon, soft and gray, rolling across the sky like the curtain of a stage long familiar. The city smelled of wet stone and asphalt. The rhythmic patter of rain accompanied every step he took. He walked slowly, umbrella in hand, the one mended and worn yet sturdy, a relic of a past storm, and a symbol of everything that had changed since. People rushed past, heads bowed, coats tight, eyes shielded, their faces blurred, but he noticed them anyway. Every person carried their own stories, their own quiet struggles. His boots splashed shallow puddles, bringing a faint memory of the first time he offered shelter to someone beneath the same rain. The memory warmed him from the inside, carried through years of absence and uncertainty. Up ahead, a figure huddled against a lamppost, shivering, drenched. Empty hands held out tentatively. Another stranger in need. Another moment he could not ignore. He slowed, stopped. The umbrella tilted forward, covering the man. A small gesture. Simple. Enough? Here, he said softly. It's not much, but it'll keep you dry. The man looked up, eyes wide. Recognition, gratitude, and disbelief mingled there. He nodded, just once, and stepped back. Let the rain fall softly around both of them, carrying away the distance, the cold, the forgotten years. For the first time, he felt the weight of everything balanced, past pain and present purpose. Every melody, every tear, every song now converged in this quiet, powerful act. He smiled faintly, feeling the rhythm of the rain like a pulse that tied together the story of his life, and the promise of stories yet to be written. The city had quieted. Rain tapped gently against the pavement, lighter now, like a soft applause from the heavens. He stood on the curb, umbrella tilted just enough to catch both his and the stranger's hands beneath it. He looked down at the folded piece of paper tucked inside the handle, worn, creased, yet deliberate. He opened it carefully. Pay it forward. It all begins with rain. He smiled faintly, feeling the weight of the message sink in. Words simple yet vast. A continuation of every small act of kindness that had carried him through years of loss and longing. From the first umbrella given to a stranger, to the melody shared across decades, life had been one circle of giving, waiting to be returned. The rain fell softly around him, not harsh, not unrelenting, gentle, like a rhythm coaxing him forward. He raised the umbrella and held it over the next figure approaching. A young man, hunched, soaked, and uncertain. His heart remembered every moment of doubt, hunger, fear, and how a simple gesture could rewrite a day, a life, a destiny. The homeless man looked up. Recognition sparked. Gratitude flickered. The umbrella extended to cover him. The city blurred around them, a mosaic of gray streets, warm lights, and distant echoes. And somewhere, faint, almost imperceptible, a piano melody drifted through the air. The notes from the recital, his daughter's song, lingered in memory, in the rain, in the promise of what comes next. He inhaled, letting the moment settle deep in his chest. Every loss, every tear, every step, all threaded together, a story of survival, redemption, and the quiet power of giving. He stepped forward, offering shelter, warmth, hope. The rain fell, the piano played, and the world waited, soft and forgiving.